So if it says somebody with domestic violence shouldn't have joint custody or 50-50 custody or full custody, what's the maximum amount that you can get out of that language? What's the maximum amount? Obviously, the maximum amount is 49%. If you can't get 50-50 or full custody, that means you can get 49% with the domestic violence finding. Because if you listen carefully, or not necessarily listen, but you think hard about what you just read, if you have domestic violence, and this guy had a domestic violence protection order, which was total bullcrap, but they can use the domestic violence, and that's why he's on supervised visitation. And then he goes to court and says, why can't I have increased time? Oh, because you have domestic violence. But that's not what the law says. The law says that it's presumed that you can't have joint or full custody. That means you can have 49% and the other person can have 51 or 40-60 or 30-70. So he should be going in and saying, Your Honor, we have an unlawful order here. You guys are putting me on supervised visitation because I have DV. But all the science and all the data and Troxel versus Granville and the public policy, it's all because kids suffer without a father. But most importantly, let's look at the science. Let's look at the evidence. 100% of all the evidence says that children suffer without a father. So you need to make a finding of fact of what's dangerous about my presence, because when I'm gone, this child is automatically in danger. Now, you guys have to make up your mind and start thinking harder than this, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's a lazy thinker. Your life with your kid is on the line. You have to go to court and argue or light a fire under your attorney, and you don't want to take any time to just think about this stuff. You don't have to do any work. Just sit there and think. Okay, I know the law says this. What does that really mean for me? Okay, all the science and all the data, 100% of it says that kids suffer without a father. So even if the dad is a pedophile or a child abuser or a drug addict, when he's removed, the child is safe from his danger, but the child still suffers a father deficiency. If you have food from your local town or the market, or like Flint, Michigan, the water's poisonous, and then you don't have any money for a couple days up until payday, or you're a welfare mom and it's a couple days before you get your money, you don't have any money to go to the store and get anything from the store, you're totally broke. So you decide, should I drink the water? Should we drink the water from the faucet and risk getting sick and poisoned? Or do we run the risk and we prevent the danger of dehydration? Well, we can water fast for a couple days, so we'll just tough it out. Or say, we can't risk being dehydrated. I'm willing to get a little sick or a little stomach flu or whatever that thing is, whatever that stuff is causing it. You have to weigh the risk. So the court, either way, you're still suffering. If I'm not drinking that Flint, Michigan water, but I'm still being dehydrated. Or I'm drinking the water, but at least I'm not being dehydrated. A child has a father taken away. Even if we're protecting the children from the father, they're still suffering from a father deficiency. Now, it's pick your poison on that one, right? But if there's no specific finding that you pose an actual danger to the child, why are they taking the child away? Because the court system is brainwashed to do stuff just because they always do. Oh, there's a red flag. We're going to label the father. We're going to black mark the father for having DV. So we're just going to do what we normally do. Restrictions, visitation. Why? The law says what it says. Go read the freaking law. When slaves were free, obviously black folks didn't have all the rights white folks had, but on paper they did, because the Constitution said all men are, Declaration of Independence plus the Constitution, all men are created equal. And then the abolitionist movement, we were the first country outside of a couple ones in Europe to eliminate slavery, since it was in every country in the history of the entire world, and it was the norm. And we undid a norm, just like you guys are walking around being mind slaves. Oh, I'll just be every other weekend dad, because it's just the norm, and you just follow the norm. And 100 years down the road, we'll be like, how the hell did dads just give in to every other weekend? And we look back, how the hell did we have slavery? Well, it was the norm back then. You had a slave just like you had a pet or a car or a horse and carriage or whatever. It was the norm. As crazy as that sounds, it was the norm. But the courts do stuff just because it's the routine. They don't look at the law. If they would have looked at the Constitution and said, we want to adhere to the Constitution, black folks can come and go and do whatever they want now. But then we had Plessy versus Ferguson and separate but equal and Jim Crow laws. Then we had to do Brown versus Board of Education to undo that. We had to gradually unbrainwash ourselves from the tradition of what we're doing. You have a court system that's not doing what the law says. The guy, when I was talking to him, when I was talking frequent and continuing contact, he said, what does frequent and continuing contact mean? It means whatever you make an argument that it means. That's the whole point of going to court. The court system can't cover every single scenario of everybody. So it has some laws, and then you argue the law in your favor. Now, that's how case law is developed. Somebody appeals and says the court got it wrong. This is what the law should really mean and be interpreted as. And so if you know case law, that helps you interpret the law because the higher courts have already defined it in more detail. But if there's no detailed finding, then case law says we go with the plain language of the law. What's frequent? Well, what's the most frequent you can have between two different people? 50-50. So it must start with that. See, if you read the stuff and think about it, then you will come up with good arguments. But most of you mother effers don't think. Start reading the stuff and paying attention to how